Welcome to part 1 of Chapter 14 video presentation. Chapter 14 is devoted to information system security, risk management, and business continuity planning. Some background information on information security. Today, organizations face both internal and external security threats. By internal threats, we mean threats that come from the inside of the organization. Let's say employees who are currently employed access information systems resources in an illegal way, compromise those resources, or use those resources for their own gain. So that's an example of an internal threat. External security threats, as you can tell from the name, they come from the outside of organizational boundaries and typically from the outside of the organization's IT infrastructure. Nowadays, external security threats are almost universally equated with the threats that come from the internet, because this is how external parties often gain unauthorized access to information systems assets and resources of an organization. Of course, things have been made worse from the security perspective due to the growth in online transactions and also usage of all kinds of external networks. So because of that, there's a growing demand in information security solutions and professionals, and as educators, we can probably see that when we deal with enrollment data for students majoring in information security and things like that. Now, traditional security measures include technical solutions. So a lot of people approach the topic of security from a technical standpoint. They think that there is a technical solution that can be developed that will prevent certain threats from happening. However, research shows that up to 80% of security breaches or security incidents happen not because of some technical deficiencies, but something that happens on the side of people. So instead of breaking a particular security function of an information system, an intruder would work with people, their psychology, to get their cooperation for getting in. So this is something called social engineering. So a lot of security accidents, incidents, security breaches happen for non-technical reasons. They happen because of people's lack of awareness or lack of training in relation to information security issues. So what I'm trying to say here is that an approach to security that is more on human or managerial side is universally viewed as something that is even more important than the technical approach to security. Although, of course, you cannot avoid using some of the most essential technical tools that we will mention briefly in this presentation. So largely, because of that increased emphasis on the human side of information system security, this chapter will be devoted mostly to managerial issues and measures in relation to information system security. So information system security deals with e-crime. So largely information system security is about preventing e-crime or addressing consequences of an e-crime. So what is an e-crime? It's a crime that involves a computer or network. Again, some e-crimes, they're technical in nature. They directly target computers or networks. So the goal of an e-crime is to damage a computer or to enter a network and do some changes there. But often e-crimes, they use computers or IT networks to do something else. It's not about inflicting damage to computers per se. It's about doing something with the help of computers. Now, computer crimes can be small. They can involve a single computer, let's say somebody copying content from one single laptop of an organization, or they can involve thousands of computers where, let's say, a worm enters an organizational network and then multiplies across the network, infects all the computers, and then, let's say, uses those computers for a remote denial of service attack. I already mentioned that due to the increased internet connectivity, where everybody is doing transactions and implementing business processes over the internet, cyber attacks or internet attacks have greatly increased over the past decade. There has been an exponential growth in that. With some of the recent events, related to politics, global issues, internet is becoming a new arena for warfare. Something that is typically referred as information warfare. And here we're talking about all kinds of things You know, those interactions or those e-crimes range from spreading false news and all the way up to gaining access to critical infrastructure like electrical plants, nuclear facilities, and doing some damage there. So here we have some examples of e-crimes committed by external attackers. So one thing that I'm sure you're all aware of, one type of security breach that happens all the time, and I'm sure you had this experience at some point of your personal or professional life, are viruses. So as you probably know, a virus is like a small chunk of code that gets inserted into a particular computer file, and this is how your computer gets infected. That file is copied to your computer with that virus being attached to it. And then typically viruses, they can multiply within the same computer by infecting other files and other software applications. One indication that your computer is infected with a virus can be that it does something strange, something funny, something unusual. A lot of viruses, they have this intention of damaging your computer. So what they will do, they will delete files, they will corrupt files to the point where a particular application cannot be run. Some viruses, they can do physical damage by doing something where your computer gets overheated, and things like that. Some viruses are a bit less malicious. Not now, those viruses are called something along the lines of malware. So what they would do, they would not necessarily damage your computer, but let's say they will lock your computer and they will demand that you send money to a particular PayPal account to unlock your computer. So that's still damaging, malicious, but it's not that severe as a virus deleting your files. And then there could be just like funny viruses where they don't necessarily do anything bad to your computer, but let's say every once in a while they display some annoying message. Maybe it's advertisement or some kind of prank or a joke. So again, there have been all kinds of viruses. I actually remember that virus I Love You. There have been so many emails circulating. It was written in Visual Basic, and one key characteristic of that virus is that it was transmitted as an email attachment with that I Love You subject, and I guess a lot of people could not resist opening an email with that kind of subject. They wanted to see who exactly loves them, so they would open the email or run the file within that email, and then that's how their computer would get infected. I actually remember receiving some emails with that subject, I love you, but I guess at that point of my life, I knew that that subject was not from a real person, so I never opened those emails. But worldwide estimated damage was in the billions of dollars. Now, another type of e-crime or specific security breach is caused by viruses called worms. In many ways, they're similar to a virus in a sense that they copy themselves to damage your computer. But one defining characteristic of a worm is that they can infect not only files within your computer, but they can also multiply over a computer network. So worms, they multiply until they infect every computer on an organizational network. Now, one indication of a worm is when you see that there's a sudden spike in your network traffic. For example, you open your network connection and you're not doing anything, you're not downloading, but you see a lot of data being sent. That's typically due to a worm, where a worm is copying or downloading something and then trying to invade other computers. So a spike in network traffic can be an indicator of that. Oftentimes worms, they slow down the entire network, they slow down computers just like viruses. So computer slowdown, network slowdown can be an indication of a worm. Again, there have been all kinds of worms out there. I remember, like in my work, many times my computer would get infected with a worm to the point where I would have to reformat the hard drive and reinstall everything because I just couldn't deal with it in any other way. One worm that I remember dealing with, it was interesting because what it would do, the first thing it would do, it would shut off my antivirus software from the computer. And then it will start sending, it will access my Outlook Express and then start sending email from my Outlook Express account. I found out because some people were telling me that they were receiving strange emails with attachment from me. And, I also saw my antivirus software being switched off by that worm. So I remember at least there was one or two occasions where the entire system had to be reinstalled because of that worm. And I'm not sure what the name was, but it was just one of those worms. Trojan horse, it's something similar to a worm or virus in a sense that it's a malicious code, malicious software that wants to multiply, that wants to be copied from one computer to another computer. But the main goal of a Trojan horse, or simply they call it those Trojans, the main goal of that Trojan horse is to open up your computer for an intruder to use it for other activities. So, for example, somebody can use a Trojan horse to connect to your video camera and see what you're doing. That's why Mark Zuckerberg has that tape over his laptop's video camera, web camera, because he doesn't want anybody to use a Trojan horse to spy on him and his family life, right? Sometimes Trojan horses are used to gain access to many computers for the purpose of denial of service attack, where those attacks will be actually launched from your computer or from your network without you realizing it. There are some funny Trojan horses that simply allow you to control a computer and you can play pranks on people. When I was in college, I was very much interested in the information system security area, in the technical aspects and also social aspects. I never did anything bad, like where I would damage somebody's resources or computer, but I was just interested in exploring vulnerabilities and mostly playing pranks on people to see what can be done to play some kind of practical joke on them. And I did a lot of those things just for fun. And nowadays they call those people white hat hackers. People who are interested in information system security but not in doing something bad with vulnerabilities. So I remember one Trojan that I installed on my roommate in college, on my roommate's computer. So what I would do, I had control of his computer, and he was a gamer. He was very much into gaming. So sometimes, when I see him, because we were sharing a room, right? So sometimes when I see him in the middle of an important video game battle, I would do things like opening his CD-ROM drive. And at first, it was just annoyed him, because he just distracted him, and he was freaking out that somebody is opening a CD-ROM drive on his computer when he's playing. At first, he didn't pay much attention. He was just annoyed by that. But then he started getting a bit paranoid. He thought indeed that somebody's controlling his computer. And that's when I told him that it's me who is playing all those pranks, like while he's playing video games. So that's Trojan horse. Logical bombs. I've heard about those incidents. It's basically it's something related to IT or software development folklore. There are always rumors that there was this group of disgruntled software developers. They got fired or they had some kind of dispute with their employer, and they left. And then they inserted code that was activated after they left, and that code deleted everything from their employer's computer, something like that. Well, a lot of times, it's folklore, like just rumors. But again, there are some documented cases of people inserting logical bombs. So logical bombs is a program or code introduced into a computer that is designed to take action at a certain time or when a specific event occurs. For example, let's say a computer programmer builds a database of clients for, for a financial institution. And then because this programmer has a very tentative or unhealthy relationship with the employer, he or she is afraid that he or she will not get paid or will get terminated unfairly. So they will insert that provision where a certain command can be sent to that application or that computer, and upon that command, the computer will delete everything, reformat the hard drive. Something like that, right? So there have been some documented cases. You can read about them on Wikipedia, where mostly programmers would insert some kind of logical bomb into their software. Now, another type of e-crime is denial of service attacks. What happens during a denial of service, or the so-called DOS attack, is that a large number of computers on the internet simultaneously send repeated messages or requests to a target computer. So basically, those are like a handshake request or something like that, where computers are basically trying to initiate a session with a remote web server. And what happens when those requests become too numerous, they overload the web server to the point where a particular website or resource is not accessible to other people, right? So it's like spam attack. You're overloading the infrastructure so that legitimate clients cannot have access to that infrastructure. I already mentioned that Trojan horses sometimes are used as a part of the so-called distributed denial of service attack, where many computers around the world get infected with a Trojan. And then on the D-Day, all those computers start sending requests to a particular website, and then the entire website is down. By the way, you can see sometimes, as a consumer, you can get those indirect sometimes experiences with the denial of service attack where your favorite website is inaccessible for an hour or two. Again, it happens for a variety of reasons, but oftentimes it happens because of a denial of service attack. That's why you could not, let's say, access Amazon at a particular point of time and things like that. Nowadays, denial of service attacks are also used as a part of political battles where, let's say, an organization that people don't like will get flooded with requests so that their website is down, so that people cannot access that website. Let's say if we're talking about a political candidate and his or her website. So it's still out there and it's being used for all kinds of purposes. Now, we've talked about technical approaches to attacking an information system, but again, research shows that a lot of times people adopt a less technical but more social approach to hacking. One great book written on the subject, some books written on the subjects are written by a person named Kevin Mitnick. He's arguably one of the most well-known hackers, and he's one of the most publicized information security professionals. He was one of the first hackers to go to jail for cybercrime. He went to jail for quite some time. I remember one interesting part of his sentencing was that, and he was still fairly young, I think he was still in his early 20s when he went to jail. One of the sentencing provisions was that he was prohibited from accessing computers like for several years after his release. So I remember reading his book, and I kind of found it surprising that a lot of people envisioned him to be like a technical genius who really understands computers and networks and security breaches, and somebody who writes like code that gains unauthorized access to computer networks. But it wasn't like that. He was more on the social engineering side. One thing I remember reading is that what he would do sometimes, he would take a CD with a virus or a Trojan, and he would use a marker to write something like salaries of marketing department on that CD. And then he would drop just that CD somewhere in the office. And then somebody would pick it up, one of the employees would pick up that CD, and they would get curious. They would be like, I want to see how much people are making in the marketing department, something like that. So they would take that CD, insert it into their computer, install the software, and that's how Kevin Mitnick would get access to the entire network. Oftentimes he said he would just call people and he would say something like, in a very authoritative voice, "Hello, my name is John Smith. I'm your new IT director. I need your password for security check purposes." And a lot of people would not, they could not resist. I mean, a lot of people would be suspicious, especially now, since people are more aware of those spoofing and phishing attack. But at that time, it was quite common for people to just give out their login and password information. And don't forget, sometimes what he would do, he would just turn over a keyboard, and that's where he would get somebody's password, glued to the bottom of the keyboard with a post-it note. Sometimes he would just raid trash cans of banks, of organizations, to find sensitive data there, maybe login information or some personal information that can be used for getting access to a computer network and things like that. So it was more on the social engineering side. Now, some common social engineering techniques involve phishing and spoofing. So phishing means solicitation of sensitive personal information from users, commonly in the form of email and instant messages. Not necessarily, email and instant messages can be over the phone. I already give you one example. Just calling randomly employees, you can easily get their phone numbers and saying something, "Hello, I'm your new IT director. I need your password right now, or all of your personal information will be deleted." So some people would not resist, even if they go through training. Some people would not resist, and they would just give you that information. Sometimes phishing is also done in conjunction with spoofing. Spoofing involves the use of a fraudulent website that mimics a legitimate one, often used in conjunction with phishing. So, for example, you may get an email, and the email address looks like it was sent by your boss. By the way, I did those things myself. I was just experimenting with email messaging, and it's very easy to send somebody a misleading email it's easy to spoof an email address. I mean, I can send you an email address from, I don't know, billg@microsoft.com, and some people may think that this email really comes from Bill Gates. But if you look at the technical details of that email, you will see that it doesn't come from Microsoft. It comes from somewhere else. But most people don't bother. I mean, if they receive an email from billg@microsoft.com, they immediately assume that it must come from their boss, Bill Gates, something like that, right? Of course, nowadays there are all kinds of filters that detect those emails. So now it's becoming like, I guess, harder to spoof people with emails, but it still can be done. Some people do it in a much simpler way. They create like a fake website. So for example, the real website is Microsoft.com, and they would create a website that's called something like mymicrosoft.com, and they will send you an email from that domain, or they will refer you to that website. Sometimes, like when I get those suspicious emails, like I Google them, like I double check the website name, I look at the properties of that email to really understand where it's coming from, whether it's a legitimate domain or not. One indication of a spoofing sometimes is that it's coming from a domain from a website that doesn't have HTTPS security protocol, because a lot of those websites, they cannot get a security certificate for a variety of reasons, so sometimes they are without it, and that's why you get this browser warning sometimes that the website that you're about to access is not using a secure connection. So that's a very big indicator, very common indicator that something may be wrong or fishy with that website. Now, again, nowadays people are more aware of those issues. Again, I think most of the time, like in 90% of cases, I can tell whether it's a phishing or spoofing attempt. But sometimes, they're really brilliant when it comes to sending those emails, and I'm really tempted to open it. And I think over the last few years there were a couple of occasions where I received an email and I could not tell whether it's a spoofing email or not. So before doing anything, I would just actually call that person and say, look, I got this email, is it yours? And they told me, no, like a lot of people already called me, it's not me, something like that. So yeah, people are more aware of those things, but I have my own theory here. You see, no matter, my own theory is that it's not just about, some people think of their theories in terms of big numbers, right? If you send like some kind of stupid request to a lot of people, most people will ignore it, but a few people will respond to it, right? So that's like a theory, the law of big numbers. But I think it's something beyond big numbers. You see, no matter how smart you are, no matter how much training you have received in information security, I think we all have our weak spot. And once a hacker, once an intruder hits that weak spot, I mean, we'll give them anything that they want, right? And I've seen that many times about, in relation to people, my colleagues that surround me. Just to give you like a couple of brief examples. I once had a colleague, and I'll try to make his story short and not very personal, but basically he had a sick child, and his health insurance was not adequately covering everything, all the medical expenses in relation to his daughter, right? So one day he received that invitation from a well-known organization. They were saying, look, we've heard about your amazing expertise. We want you to apply for this job with us. So he thought he was being recruited by that organization. Everybody was surprised that he got recruited by this famous organization because, I mean, he was a good employee, but not the kind of employee that gets headhunted by recruiters, for leading organizations. One of the things that they promised him is that, they promised him a very good insurance for him and his family. And this was his weak spot, that insurance. Once he saw that, he fell for it. To make the story short, he was spoofed to the tune of $5,000. They got that money out of him because, again, they found that weak spot. Another person that I knew, he was a very accomplished manager at an organization, and he got fired from that organization unfairly. So he started his own business, which was like a competitor to that organization from which he got fired. So for a long time he couldn't find any clients, and that bothered him. And then that was his dream, to start his own business and then kind of show that organization what they lost, and things like that. So that was his weakness, his weak spot. And one day he got this email saying, look, we want to do business with you. So he thought it was his first client. I was actually talking to him and I was saying, look, it doesn't look right. I mean, I know it's phishing, some kind of spoofing attempt. This is not a legitimate client. He refused to believe. He really felt that, I was trying to somehow diminish his abilities and things like that. So I told him many times, look, don't fall for it. That's not a legitimate client. It all sounds fishy. Don't do it. I really don't know whether he went for it or not, but I was just surprised that he was an intelligent man. He was quite accomplished in his job. I mean, and I was like an outsider, right? But even I could sense that something was going on there. But I was surprised that he was so blind that it just that client, that offer that he got was just too good to be true. It was something along the lines of that spam that we get. Something along the lines of um, hello, I'm a princess. My father, who is the king of this country, has died, and now I need to cash $20 million. So that kind of, it wasn't that crazy, but it was something along those lines. It was better, like more professionally written, but I could tell that it was like some kind of phishing, spoofing attempt, and he couldn't, at least initially he couldn't tell that. So that's my theory. Everybody has a weak spot, and sometimes you get hit on that spot. I had my own weak spot too, and I remember I got an email that hit that weak spot, and I almost fell for it. I remember I was like, oh, and then I just kind of cooled off and said, look, it's too good to be true. It's not true. I mean, it's just, again, if it's too good to be true, then it is, right? So I kind of held myself and didn't go any further. Now, oftentimes crimes are committed on the inside, so it's not like that criminal outsider who invades your network. It's oftentimes, actually in most cases, it's something done by current employees, recent employees, business partners. Again, there's research that shows like something along the lines of 80%, or majority of successful hacking attacks, they're accomplished because there's an insider cooperating, right? So insider can help somebody gain unauthorized access to information systems or networks by giving them his or her account. Sometimes that person can steal something on the inside, like some trade secrets, and just copy something. Or sometimes business partners, they do it either intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes unintentionally, they release confidential data that is given to them as a result of that business partnership. Oftentimes it happens when partners come from different countries, different jurisdiction, where they don't follow the same kind of processes. They're not as serious about protecting data. Or sometimes it's a deliberate attempt. I mean, sometimes a business partner wants to steal organizational data to get rid of that partner and start doing things on their own.